In the beginning, Valhalla is introduced as one of the 3 most prestigious hunting institutes in the world. Every year, an enormous number of hunters attempt to enter this renowned institution, seeking to carry its prestige. However, the probability of being accepted is only 1 in 500. Moreover, of those who manage to get in, only 150 complete the training. The competition begins right after the entrance ceremony, with some students already engaging in intense fights, exchanging punches and kicks. They are divided into squares for individual battles, while the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-shu, closely observes everything. At that moment, the director of eyes, commenting that this year has brought promising candidates. Lee Sang agrees, mentioning that admission by ranking is common. He takes the opportunity to ask if the director is there to observe his niece. The director confirms, explaining that the family has high expectations for Si Ian. Lee Sang then reflects on the girl, who belongs to one of the 5 most illustrious families in Korea, the Yosin, known as a lineage of geniuses. He notes that, in general, children begin learning to manipulate mana at 10 years old during elementary school, and by 13, they can already use it with their swords. By 16, members of the Yosin family, for example, are practically invincible in duels. The director suggests that Lee Sang review Si Ian's profile, but the instructor questions what makes her so special. In response, the director reveals that they managed to communicate with the Yosin family's guardian of constellations, leaving Lee Sang in disbelief. He comments that such communication is extremely rare, nearly equivalent to a direct contract with the guardian, something far beyond the common blessings hunters typically receive. The director explains that in Korea, there are 5 chosen families, each with a guardian. The guardian of the Yosin family is the god of the sword, while the others are the god of spirits, Jensen family, the god of martial arts, Choijin family, the god of fists, Osin family, and the god of bows, John family. These guardians grant protection and exceptional talents to the members of their respective families. Lee Sang begins to understand that Si Ian is truly a prodigy and decides to observe her match, which is about to start in 30 seconds. The director, concerned about the crowd of reporters and guild recruiters present, requests that the match be displayed on the big screen. Reluctantly, Lee Sang complies. Si Ian prepares to draw her sword, while her opponent, Kim Joo Hyuk, appears completely relaxed, yawning, and nearly falling asleep. The director, perplexed, wonders if the boy will give up upon discovering who she is, considering her abilities are known worldwide. Lee Sang notices that Kim does not emit any kind of energy, but the director downplays it, believing the duel will be quick. As the countdown begins, Si Ian charges forward, activating the mana in her sword and delivering an upward strike. However, Kim vanishes before her eyes. Lee Sang acknowledges the girl's incredible steadiness and mana control, but what happens next astonishes everyone. Kim calmly faces the attack, displaying only a faint smile, leaving spectators and instructors utterly shocked. Kim wins the fight in an impressive manner, leaving the girl lying on the ground. He stares at her and asks if that was all she had to offer, questioning how she could be so weak. Amid the disbelief surrounding him, he wonders if this was truly the future, 300 years after his own time. 300 years earlier, in the Tower of Destruction, the King of Destruction, Brace, praised the epic battle they had fought. Even exhausted and wounded, the martial king, King Mayan W, silently observed but soon lunged forward with a final devastating strike, delivering a kick that tore Brace's head off. Before falling, Brace admitted it had been a memorable fight. At that moment, King Mayan W received a system notification informing him that the Tower of Destruction and its master had been defeated, canceling the world's impending destruction. As the tower began to collapse, King Mayan W, surprised, felt a searing pain in his stomach. Frustrated, he lamented that just when he could finally enjoy the peace he had long desired, he was on the brink of death. He reflected on his harsh life as a hunter since childhood, surviving through hard labor and dreaming of glory and stability, both now slipping through his fingers. He regretted not bringing his disciples, but concluded that, against such a powerful opponent, they might have died. Resigned, King Mayan W mentally bid farewell to his disciples before being crushed by a falling stone. In the present, King Mayan W opens his eyes, confused, in an unfamiliar place. He realizes he has reincarnated into the body of a 17-year-old boy named Kim Joo Hyuk. 300 years had passed since the collapse of the tower. Although his body is young and weak, he still retains all the knowledge he accumulated as the god of war. Determined, Kim Joo plans to adapt to his new body and finally live the peaceful life he always longed for. However, his plans are interrupted when a notification window appears, informing him that in 5 years, the Tower of Destruction would reappear and he must prepare. Furious at the news, Kim curses Brace and regrets not completely destroying his body in the past. Even so, he decides to focus on the future and promises that this time, he will overcome the tower's challenges and fully enjoy life. Another notification appears, instructing him to find his lost weapons and memories in the Constellation Room of Valhalla, on the 3rd underground floor, in the 5th room on the right. Determined, Kim concludes he must go to Valhalla to begin his new journey. At Valhalla, Kim is summoned to participate in a competition competition that will determine the top 10 in the rankings. He enters the stadium, where he faces a towering opponent who seemed twice his size. Lee Sang watches and comments that the number of spectators was larger than the previous year, likely because of the heirs of the 5 families and Kim himself. Kim discovers that his opponent is Oh Si-hyuk, the eldest son of the Osin family. Upon recognizing Kim, Si-hyuk questions how someone so seemingly ordinary could have defeated Si-eun on the first day. Although he underestimates Kim, Si-hyuk decides that defeating him would be his chance to gain worldwide fame. He taunts Kim, threatening to kill him, but Kim, with his typical sarcasm, asks if that was some kind of slang or a joke. Si-hyuk insists, declaring he will beat him to death, but Kim simply responds with disdain, making it clear he wasn't taking the threat seriously. Then, Kim tells his opponent to go to hell, flipping him off with his middle finger and cursing him intensely. With that, the duel begins. At this moment, the focus shifts to Oh Si-hyuk, the eldest son of the Osin family. It is said that he wasn't particularly talented in literature, strategy, or martial arts, but he possessed an innate ability that placed him above others: his physical condition. He could accomplish feats that others could never achieve without using mana. Even with minimal training, Si-hyuk grew exponentially stronger, having been born with an extraordinary physique that required no effort to stand out. This natural gift earned him the title of a genius. Back in the present, at the start of the match, Kim confirms that he really did tell Si-hyuk to screw off, which enrages Si-hyuk. Calling Kim a piece of trash, Si-hyuk charges at him with full force. Despite this, Kim calmly analyzes the situation, reflecting that no matter how impressive Si-hyuk's physique is, it doesn't guarantee victory in hand-to-hand combat. He notices that although Si-hyuk has immense strength, he lacks technique and strategy. Si-hyuk throws a punch with all his strength, but Kim easily dodges it. Kim then uses simple and efficient moves, like a swift leg sweep that knocks Si-hyuk off balance, demonstrating that the ability to observe an opponent is far more important than brute force. When Si-hyuk falls, Kim wastes no time and delivers a precise strike to his chest, effectively shutting down Si-hyuk's body and sending him crashing to the ground. Kim reflects that without a balance between strength and technique, the outcome is predictable. He thinks that although his reincarnated body is weaker than his previous one, he won't have any trouble dealing with monsters and continuing as a hunter. Satisfied, Kim leaves the arena while Lee Sang and the audience are left stunned, questioning whether Si-hyuk was truly defeated by such a simple attack. Chulshin, the head of the Osin family, steps in to defend Si-hyuk, outraged by the audience's comments labeling the move as simple. He explains that even without martial arts training, Si-hyuk's superior physique should have allowed him to easily dodge any attack from someone his age. However, what happened was entirely different. Chulshin observes that Si-hyuk let his temper take over and recklessly charged forward, even resorting to using magic, a rare occurrence for him, in an attempt to quickly end the fight. Yet, Kim merely tilted his head slightly to dodge, subtly knocked Si-hyuk off balance, and finished him with a hand strike. Chulshin acknowledges that Kim moved faster than Si-hyuk at his top speed and that Kim had a strategy in place from the very start of the fight. He considers this an extraordinary talent and feels excited, but quickly realizes that others have also recognized the young man's potential. Determined, Chulshin vows to do whatever it takes to bring Kim into his family. Meanwhile, the competition continues, and the spectators begin to idolize Choi Erin, a 17-year-old fighter. Kim grows curious, especially when he hears army veterans calling her Big Sis. Soon, the final duel is announced. It will be between Kim and Choi Erin. At the start of the match, Erin acts with extreme caution, drawing her sword and positioning herself defensively. Neither of them makes the first move. Kim observes the situation, wondering if she is waiting for him to attack first. He realizes that Erin already shows more strategic awareness than most opponents he has faced so far. A smile forms on his face as he contemplates whether he should take the initiative or wait a little longer. He begins to walk slowly toward the girl, maintaining a fixed smile while staring directly into her eyes. The intensity of his steps makes her feel cornered. Nervous, she channels mana into her sword, surprising everyone by demonstrating that, at only 17 years old, she already mastered the element switching ability of the Choi gene family. Time to recover. He moves even closer, presses against her sword, and, staring her down, declares, "Now try to dodge this too." He executes a 1-inch punch, generating a devastating shockwave that courses through her body, causing her to collapse. Kim notices that his stance during the attack was slightly off but concludes that it is irrelevant since the victory is his. He secures first place in the admissions for Valhalla, something entirely unexpected by everyone. After emerging victorious, he casually walks out of the arena, where he is immediately surrounded by reporters and guild recruiters eager to hear his story and attempt to recruit him. Annoyed, he tells them all to shut up. The next day, newspapers begin questioning whether Kim is a psychopath or someone on the brink of madness, highlighting that after securing first place, he pursued the guilds that made him offers, mercilessly insulting them. Meanwhile, at Valhalla, the freshmen are welcomed and hear about the institute's history, something Kim finds extremely boring. However, he notices that someone is watching him. When he turns looks around, the other student quickly averts their gaze, and Kim wonders if he attracted too much attention the previous day. He recalls that upon arriving home, the system reminded him to claim his weapons in memories. Kim assumed it would be a simple task, just go in and out without complications. However, in the virtual combat simulation room, former head instructor Kim Lee-gun observes the student distribution and begins to question it. Standing at the front of the room is Si Ian from the Yosin family, beside Aaron from the Choi Jin family. To make matters worse, right in the center stands Si Hyuk from the Yosin family. Lee-gun mutters that the classes should have been distributed randomly but wonders how 3 of the 5 geniuses from the great families ended up in the same room. Lee-gun also notices Kim and questions why that bastard is there. To him, this year is shaping up to be a true nightmare. Even so, he decides to stay calm and assert authority from the start. He introduces himself to the class as their supervisor and head instructor. Then, to establish dominance, he presses a button that activates an illusionary room. The students, bewildered, look around, asking where they are since they were just in the classroom moments ago. The instructor reflects that by showing a little bloodlust, he can take control of the situation. With that, he draws his sword and conjures illusions of dozens of orcs and goblins with an intimidating presence. The illusionary monsters charge forward with bloodthirsty intent, striking fear into the students. As the monsters attempt to attack, they are blocked by a barrier, much to the instructor's relief, who is satisfied to see the protection functioning properly. Taking advantage of the chaos, he calls out to Kim and asks if he would be capable of facing the monsters alone. Confused, Kim questions if the instructor is seriously referring to those creatures, and the instructor confirms. Kim begins to think, while the instructor concludes that this experience will serve to humble Kim's ego. After all, many of the students had only seen monsters in books, and it was natural for them to be terrified when seeing them up close. The instructor orders Kim to stop pretending he's considering the offer and just admit he can't handle the monsters, promising to start the class once the boy's ego is shattered. However, Kim responds with a defiant smile, irritating the instructor, who asks if he's mocking him. Without hesitation, Kim confidently states that he can handle all of them alone, making the instructor believe the boy is bluffing. Determined to expose Kim's arrogance, the instructor tells him to go ahead and try. Kim then asks if this is merely a test and remarks that he didn't know they'd be facing something like this on the first day. Realizing that the instructor is testing his abilities, Kim figures he could get something in return and suggests making a bet. The instructor, hesitant, accepts the challenge and proposes that if Kim defeats all the monsters, he will do anything within his power. Kim, with a sly smile, agrees to the deal, while the instructor begins to doubt whether the boy truly understands the seriousness of the situation. The instructor warns Kim that the system's monsters behave like real creatures, yet Kim simply asks for a sword, catching the instructor off guard. Kim argues that he can't fight without a weapon and questions if the instructor really expected him to face those creatures barehanded. Recognizing that Kim has a point, the instructor hands over his own sword to the boy, still suspicious that this is all just a bluff. Excited about the weapon, Kim advances through a gate in the barrier that puts him face to face with the monsters. While the students watch nervously, the professor remains skeptical. As soon as the fight begins, Kim draws his sword and decapitates several monsters at once. He continues eliminating the creatures with extreme ease, even reacting swiftly to those attempting to attack him from behind. With a quick movement, he flips the sword and impales one of them, commenting that it has been 300 years since he last held a blade, yet he is still in good shape. As he fights, Kim reflects on how, in his era, the world was filled with monsters, and any type of weapon was used to survive. He feels a slight sense of nostalgia while handling the sword, something that feels familiar and comfortable. At that moment, a monster emerges behind him, wielding a club. Kim dodges effortlessly, noticing that the attack patterns are simple and wondering if it is merely a well-crafted artificial monster. The students are astonished as they watch Kim's skill, while the professor cannot believe what he is witnessing. He recalls that the sword he lent to Kim was an ordinary weapon, without any magic or special attributes, and concludes that the boy is far more talented than he initially thought. He wonders how Kim can cut through everything so easily because it seems as if his sword is literally absorbing the monsters. Those who fought against him watch in disbelief, thinking it is pure madness. Meanwhile, from a distance, Choi blushes visibly, trying to hide her reaction. Kim, after the battle, casually remarks that he wants to go to the constellation room and looks at the professor with a mischievous gaze, asking if he will truly keep his promise. Later, at the end of class, the professor mentions that, considering the exhaustion from the first day, the students should go straight to the dormitories to rest. Meanwhile, Kim feels an overwhelming sense of boredom and reflects on how dull these classes are. He thinks he will stay only as long as necessary to learn what he needs and then move on. He is still surprised to realize that he never considered becoming a teacher, but at the same time, he has never attended a school before. As he leaves, he concludes that, despite Despite the class being boring, he managed to gather some valuable information, especially about the constellations. He recalls that, in his past life, there was no such thing as constellations and reflects on the meaning of the term, which refers to the transformation of historical figures who accumulated great achievements or wealth into gods. He notes that most of these constellations are closely tied to hunters, as the relics associated with them grant special powers. Valhalla, being the third largest academy in the world, boasts countless relics from these constellations. However, Kim thinks that swordsmanship skills or techniques for exterminating monsters are useless for him. He wonders if he should focus on martial arts training since his current body is still very weak. At that moment, someone timidly approaches. It is Choi, hesitating to start a conversation. Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, Lee Sang talks with another instructor, who comments on Kim's performance. The professor admits that it was not suffering but rather a great embarrassment. He reflects on what he witnessed and concludes that it makes no sense for Kim to be just a high school student. After all, he defeated 120 monsters in the virtual combat simulation room. Lee Sang questions, a high school student who has never faced a monster in his life managed to do that. The other professor confirms, but both remain thoughtful, considering how strange it all is. Lee Sang observes that Kim, at first glance, doesn't seem to have anything special about him. However, the instructor mentions that he has done research on Kim's past. He explains that Kim is an orphan who came from a small orphanage located in an extremely dangerous area. Surprised, Lee Sang questions whether this could be a lie, but the instructor assures him that he personally verified the information and there is no fraud. He also adds that if it were a ruse, Kim wouldn't have enrolled in Valhalla or caused such a commotion during the opening ceremony. The instructor then brings up Kim's desire to access the constellation room. He explains that after the first semester, Kim would be allowed entry, but if he requested permission directly from the director, he could access the first basement floor immediately. The instructor thanks him for the information, but Lee Sang warns that, since he was the one who brought Kim to Valhalla, he must take responsibility for him. Lee Sang also points out that Kim seems unaware of the completely restricted areas, such as the 5th floor, but admits there won't be any issues if he only accesses the 1st floor briefly. Finally, the instructor expresses concern about the upcoming year. Lee Sang asks if this concern is about Kim, and the instructor confirms, adding that his class also includes 3 of the 5 heirs from the great families. This alone is challenging, as managing even one student from those families is no easy task. Lee Sang reflects on the situation and comments that he's not trying to offer comfort, but he informs his colleague that there is a transfer student from the Venric family in another class. The instructor, surprised, asks if he's referring to that Venric family. Lee Sang confirms, explaining that it is the direct bloodline of the Venric family, including Rock Dio Ventric. The other instructor recalls rumors that Rock was expelled from the British Academy due to problems, which puts him at ease. He remarks that, knowing this, his own class's situation now seems better compared to the other group. Meanwhile, Kim notices Choi staring intensely at him. Suddenly, she asks him to teach her swordsmanship. Shocked, Kim can't believe what he hears, but she repeats the request, insisting that he teach her the techniques he demonstrated earlier. Kim immediately refuses, and when she asks why, he simply replies that he doesn't want to. Annoyed, he says that if she has nothing else to say, he's leaving. However, Choi insists once again, which makes him even more impatient. He asks if there's something wrong with her hearing and demands that she stop following him, making it clear he has no intention of teaching her anything. Finally, he tells her to disappear, leaving Choi behind as she silently watches him walk away. The next day, in class, Kim reflects on his current body. He had expected some limitations but realizes it's worse than he thought. Even with his martial arts training, he feels unable to accomplish anything significant due to his lack of magical power. He concludes that this issue could be resolved if he finds that thing, but to do so, he must start accumulating mana. While deep in thought, 2 students approach Kim. One of them, with an irritating attitude, introduces himself as Rock, and the other as Yora. Kim, openly indifferent, asks who they are. Impatiently, Rock explains that he is part of the Venric family and gets straight to the point, asking if Kim wants to become strong. He begins explaining that in many families, the affiliated bloodlines struggle to obtain power and wealth compared to the main lineage. However, the Venric family is different, thanks to the Constellation Guardian, a being in the form of a beaked mask that grants strength and protection to his contractors. Rock continues, detailing that unlike other families, the Venric family chose to allow members of the secondary bloodline to sign direct contracts with the Constellation. This unique approach granted the Venric family significant power in Europe, enabling even affiliated members to reach the same level of strength as the main lineage. Despite this, Rock, emboldened by this authority, became extremely arrogant. He recalls the incident at the British Academy that led to his expulsion but downplays it, convinced that his family will always find a way to put him back on track. He glances at Yora, stating that it's fine and that he has no regrets about the past. His current goal is to win over Kim, who caught everyone's attention during the entrance ceremony, to have him by his side. Rock promises that if Kim joins him, he will lead him to the constellation. However, Kim is unimpressed and calls him an idiot, completely dismissing his offer. Offended, Rock demands that Kim repeat what he said, and Kim does so without hesitation, asking if Rock thinks he is stupid. He makes it clear that he had no interest in Rock from the beginning and says that with so much pointless talk, Rock is truly proving himself to be an idiot. Furious, Rock explodes, calling Kim an insolent and disrespectful brat. The professor enters the room, ordering everyone to return to their seats and addressing Rock by his full name, Rock Theovendrick. Immediately irritated, Rock starts to cause a scene, but his attitude changes when he realizes it is Lee Sang standing there. He quickly backs down, intimidated. Lee Sang stares at him sternly and states that this is not the British Academy but Valhalla, and no matter how influential the Vendrick family may be, he must respect the institution's instructors. Seeing no alternative, Rock leaves the room begrudgingly, muttering that he will cross paths with Kim again. Outside, Kim reflects on the day, frustrated. He realizes he made no progress regarding the constellation hole and instead had to deal with an idiot in the morning. He also notices that the scouts from the 5 guilds are nothing more than opportunists, using students and instructors for recruitment. He questions whether it isn't enough for them to already be viewed poorly, but his thoughts are interrupted by Choi Erin, who approaches once again, asking him to teach her swordsmanship. Without patience, Kim asks if she didn't understand what he told her the day before. Meanwhile, in the Valhalla dormitory, Rock is having a fit of rage in his room, breaking objects as he thinks about Kim. He cannot accept how a worthless orphan dared to humiliate him. Enraged, he orders Yora to call Daira to handle a certain person. However, Yora remains silent, which infuriates Rock even more. He grabs the girl by her hair, demanding an answer and threatening her by insinuating that he could have her expelled from the Vendrick family. Terrified, Yora gives in and promises to obey, agreeing to make the call and deliver the message. Back in Kim's dormitory, he continues struggling to circulate his mana, frustrated with the poor quality of his current body. He laments being unable to use any magic and once again recalls Choi Erin relentlessly following him. Near the dormitory entrance, Kim asks why she is still pursuing him and if she plans to continue. Unfazed, she repeats her request for him to teach her swordsmanship. Irritated, Kim compares her persistence to that of a parrot, complaining about her stubbornness. Tired of the situation, he tries to push her away by demanding an absurd payment of 10 million won for a single lesson. To his surprise, Erin lowers her head but then asks for his phone. Confused, Kim asks why, and she responds that it's to transfer the money. Disbelieving, he watches as she actually transfers 100 million won, leaving him stunned. Despite this, he cancels the transaction and firmly refuses to teach her, explaining that doing so would reveal all his secrets. Still, he reflects on how unexpected it was for a student to have access to such a large sum of money. He concludes that, in the end, it doesn't matter because money isn't his priority. He decides to focus on finding the secret vault. That night, he prepares himself, packs a backpack, and heads out with determination. As he walks, he recalls researching Valhalla before enrolling. Most of the vaults that existed 300 years ago were destroyed, but he believes at least 4 still remain. However, he considers it likely that only 3 have survived, and all signs point to them being hidden in the mountains of Valhalla. Kim decides he must search for the vaults, starting by summoning his mana and spreading it through the environment. He mutters to himself that the vault's locations can be detected through the marble that reacts to his magic. Even with his limited mana, he manages to sense them and identifies the first vault. The area begins to glow, and he starts digging, but he quickly regrets it, cursing his weak body. He reflects that if he had known it would be this exhausting, he would have buried the vault in a shallower spot. As he digs, Kim remembers that 300 years ago, the Tower of Destruction left the world on the brink of collapse, and there was no safe place for his wealth. That was why he created and hid the vaults. Now, he eagerly hopes the treasures are still intact. By morning, he finally uncovers the vaults and wonders where the lock is. Upon examining them, he realizes that an ordinary key wouldn't work, so he decides to create a key molded with magic. With this solution, he quickly unlocks the vault and steps inside, discovering that everything is exactly as he left it. He thanks himself for storing everything in gold because, after 300 years, any other material would have deteriorated. Among the items, Kim finds storage stones he had imbued with magic to preserve the vaults. He realizes it's time to use them. As he absorbs the magic stored in the stones, he feels his body overflowing with energy while the stones completely empty. With that, he decides his next task will be to take care of the remaining stones. He wonders whether he should carry the heavy gold bars or opt for the lighter jewels, but he leaves that decision for later. However, during class, Kim is exhausted, completely regretting having created the vaults in the past. He complains that his muscles are sore just from doing a bit of digging. At that moment, he is surprised by Choi Erin, who approaches him once again, asking to learn swordsmanship from him. Annoyed, Kim asks if she truly won't give up. He reflects that, according to the information he gathered after reincarnating, the Choi Jin family, to which Eren belongs, is probably the only one that still practices swordsmanship. This makes him question why she insists so much on learning from him when she could easily learn directly from her own family. When he asks why she is so persistent, Eren responds that she has never seen anyone handle a sword better than he does. Kim, incredulous, compares his skills to her father's, the head of the Choi Jin family, and asks if he isn't better with a sword. Eren begins to talk about her father, but before she can finish, the professor appears, calling Kim to follow him to the teacher's lounge. Kim hesitates for a moment, but the professor mentions that it's about something related to what Kim had asked earlier, sparking his curiosity. He quickly stands up, leaving Eren behind. She tries to continue the conversation but realizes she won't succeed. To her surprise, Kim catches her off guard by telling her to meet him at 6 o'clock in the morning at the training center. Stunned, Eren nods and confirms she will be there. In the teacher's lounge, the instructor explains that he has a class soon and needs to be brief. He informs Kim that his access to the Constellation building has been approved, but emphasizes that he is only permitted to enter the first basement level. He is not authorized to access any floors below that. Kim understands the explanation and asks the professor when he can visit the place. The professor replies that if it's available, Kim can go at night. Determined, Kim states that he will go that very day. The professor is surprised, as he expected the boy to complain about not having access to the second basement. However, Kim simply accepts the restrictions, and the atmosphere between them remains calm. With that, Kim leaves the room. That night, the professor escorts Kim to the most secure building in Valhalla Academy, the Constellation Hall. Upon arriving at the entrance, Kim notices several guards stationed there, and the security appears even more reinforced than at the Academy's main gate. The professor explains that this level of protection reflects the importance of the Constellation building, which is part of what makes Valhalla one of the 3 greatest academies in the world. Observing the details, Kim realizes that it's not just the human security that is impressive, but also the outer walls, which are covered in numerous magical enchantments, leaving only the entrance exposed. He then questions the professor about how one could descend to the second basement. He suggests that perhaps he would need to do something illegal to get there. The professor responds that it wouldn't make him exactly a criminal, but it would certainly get him expelled from the academy. Additionally, he warns that the second basement is flooded with magical energy from the constellations. Anyone who came into direct contact with that energy would have their minds shattered, driving them insane. Kim feels intrigued but also excited by the idea, which makes the instructor suspicious. He wonders why the boy is so interested in the second basement floor before even stepping onto the first. Despite this, he dismisses the possibility of Kim attempting anything reckless, believing that, as the top admission candidate, Kim knows it's wiser to stay within the academy's rules. The instructor gives Kim 30 minutes to explore and warns him that he must leave as soon as the time is up. Kim confidently assures him that he will be back soon. As he walks through the building, the system once again instructs him to claim his weapons and memories in the 5th room to the right on the 3rd basement floor. Determined, Kim decides he will do this, even if it means getting expelled from the academy. He reflects that he is only there because of that place and that he must reach the 3rd basement level. As he descends the endless stairs, he starts wondering why the building has so many floors and questions whether the place feels more like a prison than a treasure vault. Kim hesitates for a moment about continuing when the system notifies him that he has met the requirements. Before he can react, he is teleported. Surrounded by darkness, a voice calls out to him, addressing him as King Mayan W. He recognizes this name as the one he used in his past life. Then, a familiar figure appears before him, Brace. Brace remarks that 300 years have passed, wondering if this could be considered a reunion. Without warning, Kim throws a punch directly at Brace's face, seizing the opportunity to release his pent-up anger. Brace attempts to calm him down, but Kim keeps punching, ignoring Brace's pleas to talk. Eventually, exhausted, Kim stops and, still furious, states that he isn't the kind of person who solves things with his fists. Confused, Brace asks why he acted that way, but Kim explodes, saying that this situation is different. He accuses Brace of destroying his future, stomping on him while shouting that Brace took his money, his honor, and all the years he dedicated to training his disciples. Trying to regain control of the situation, Brace urges Kim to calm down and suggests he must be curious about the place. Gasping for breath, Kim demands to know what this place is, pointing out how empty it seems. Brace explains that the space is an imaginary world created as a relic. He adds that his real body ceased to exist 300 years ago and that what Kim is seeing is merely a manifestation within this imaginary world. Kim asks Brace if he's implying that he has spent all this time inside that relic. Brace confirms, explaining that after his death, he was trapped there for 300 years. When Brace reveals that he became a constellation, Kim loses his patience and lunges at him again, delivering another blow. While the two argue within the imaginary space, the instructor outside grows impatient, waiting for Kim to return. Eventually, Kim emerges, and before the instructor can say anything, Kim assures him that he didn't didn't do anything strange, he just took a look around. He adds that he didn't go too deep because he knew he would literally lose his head if he did. Relieved, the instructor orders Kim to return to the dormitory immediately. As he walks, Kim reflects on his conversation with Brace. He admits that he doesn't care if Brace became a constellation, but he wants answers about the transparent notification he received. He demands that Brace explain what it means. However, Brace claims he doesn't know either. Frustrated, Kim threatens to attack him again, but Brace defends himself by telling the truth. After being killed by Kim, he spent 300 years trapped in that space, powerless and without control. Kim releases him, still irritated, and asks who sent the message. Brace reveals that he also received the notification, instructing him to contact the reincarnated Kim Ju-hyuk to recover his memories. He adds that since then, a suspicious individual has appeared, leading him to believe that this person might be connected to the reason he became the owner of the Tower of Destruction. When Kim asks who this person is, Brace admits he doesn't know, as his memories from that time have vanished. Brace explains that the lost memories might gradually return and asks Kim about the content of his own notification. Kim says the message instructed him to find a weapon and memories, but he couldn't read what was written below due to symbols censoring the information. He states that he doesn't feel like he has lost any memories and still recalls the tower. Brace suggests that the memories might surface naturally now that Kim has already found the weapon. Curious, Kim asks about the weapon mentioned. Brace explains that the space they are in is the inner world of the 4 weapons from the village, which became sacred relics. He adds that he became a constellation because he used one of those weapons, the village sword, as a relic. For no clear reason, Kim becomes furious upon hearing this, reflecting that the village sword he brought with him now houses a constellation. He wonders how he ended up in this situation, wanting to destroy everything and leave the past behind, yet now he is bound to this sword. He concludes that even though he is weaker than before, he cannot simply abandon Brace, who was once the feared king of destruction. Moreover, his new mission and the notification seems impossible to achieve without the village sword. Frustrated, he realizes he isn't even sure which sword it is. As he contemplates this, a group of students appears and approaches Kim. One of them asks if he is the freshman who took first place in the entrance ceremony. Looking around, Kim notices that the students have the demeanor of bullies and seem eager to cause trouble. Among them is Larrick Sunrise, a second-year student who stands out. Kim is surprised that Valhalla accepts students like this, while Larrick notices that Kim shows no sign of fear. Larrick remarks that, as the top student, Kim should at least greet his seniors, but adds that this alone isn't enough. When one of the bullies suggests they teach Kim a lesson, Larrick urges caution and provocatively says that the gap between first and second place is enormous, implying that Kim will need to prove he deserves respect. Kim, already prepared for the fight, cuts off the argument by ordering everyone to stop talking and start fighting. Without hesitation, he strikes the first bully, delivering a precise kick to the stomach of the bully and then landing a punch to his face that sends him flying. His companions immediately step aside, letting the boy fall to the ground without offering any help. Larrick, impressed, calls Kim crazy, but when he looks at him, he notices Kim is folding his sword and questions where it came from, as he had no weapon just moments ago. Kim, enjoying the feeling of wielding the sword, taunts them to come at him, provoking that it will be fun to take them all down. A few hours earlier, Larrick had received instructions from Rock Deal, who ordered him to deal with Kim. Rock promised him a generous reward, something that would greatly benefit the Sunrise family. Confident, Larrick accepted the task, believing that a first-year student would be no match for him, a second-year veteran. He reflected that second-year students hold a significant advantage due to the contracts they form with constellations during the second semester of their first year, granting them access to their constellation's powers. However, Larrick's expectations quickly proved to be wrong. In the fight, Kim defeats the bullies one by one. One of them, armed with a dagger, tries to attack, but Kim disarms him with a strike from the sheath of his sword, sending him flying. Another veteran attempts to catch him off guard by leaping from above, but Kim easily dodges and, before the opponent can react, strikes him down with a blow that slams him into the ground. Watching the scene unfold, Larrick can't believe that Kim, a first-year student without a contract, is effortlessly defeating second-year veterans. Larrick realizes that Kim's attacks seem simple and lack exceptional force, yet those hit by them can barely stand back up. As Kim adjusts his grip on the sword, he taunts the remaining group, reminding them that he had already warned he would crush anyone who wasted his time. Larrick, trying to rally his teammates, yells that Kim is just a rookie and that they have no reason to be afraid. However, Kim cuts him off, telling him to shut up. He channels mana into his sword and moves in to attack, but suddenly stops mid-motion, slamming the sword's hilt into Larrick's stomach. Shocked, Larrick can only wonder how Kim closed the distance so quickly before being sent flying by a palm strike through the sword. After the fight, Kim wakes Larrick with a few slaps and demands to know why they attacked him. Larrick tries to justify it by saying saying they are his seniors, but Kim doesn't buy that veterans would need weapons to fight a freshman. He demands Lyric reveal who sent them, but Lyric tries to lie, claiming it was just to break the nose of the top-ranked student. Sensing the attempt to hide something, Kim sarcastically comments on the bully's loyalty, mockingly saying he's touched, then leaves, ordering them to clean up the mess. Before Kim walks away, Lyric tries to threaten him, saying he'll be expelled if the incident is discovered. Kim, however, scoffs, remarking that if the story spreads, he'll tell everyone that several second-year veterans were beaten by a rookie. He mocks Lyric, telling him to think carefully if he wants to carry that shame. Meanwhile, Mockdeal receives a call from Lyric, asking if he completed the task. To his surprise, Lyric responds that he gave up and abruptly hangs up on Rock. Confused and furious, Mock demands to know what happened and insists that Lyric report the incident to the administration. Lyric refuses, stating that even if the Venric family sponsored him, they would not be able to recover the honor he lost. Frustrated, Rock insults Lyric before turning to Yora and asking if she managed to contact Dissera. Yora confirms, explaining that Dissera is on his way, but it will take some time for him to arrive. Meanwhile, in Mexico at Aripiat Academy, Dissera, busy fighting off everyone around him, learns that he has been summoned to Korea to deal with Kim. Excited by the news, he thinks this is the perfect opportunity to make money and turn around his financial situation. The next day, at 6 o'clock in the evening, Kim arrives at Valhalla's training hall, impressed by the size of the place. He wonders if the grandeur is due to the school's massive scale, feeling motivated to explore and prepare for future challenges. As Kim stretches in the training hall, he suddenly hears Brace's voice asking what he's doing there. Confused, Kim questions how Brace is speaking to him. Brace explains that he is sealed inside the sword. Surprised, Kim comments that he thought Brace had somehow escaped and even jokes that if that were the case, he would drag him back by force. Brace assures him there's no need to worry since he's completely confined. Feeling at ease, Kim resumes his stretching but takes the opportunity to ask about the sword, now a relic stored in Valhalla. Brace reveals that he swapped the original sword for a replica, leaving Kim intrigued and questioning how he managed to create a replica. Brace admits that since he awoke, he discovered he has this ability, even though he doesn't understand where it came from. Meanwhile, Kim notices Choi Aaron standing nearby, watching him talk to himself. Startled, he asks what she's doing there. Once again, she insists that she wants to learn swordsmanship. Kim refuses again, saying they will start with something more basic, improving her physical endurance. Confused, Aaron asks why, but Kim simply responds that she can leave if she doesn't want to continue. Determined, she decides to stay. Kim puts Aaron through a routine of simple but challenging exercises, push-ups, squats, and weightlifting. Even without added weight, Aaron struggles to complete the exercises and ends up collapsed on the floor, exhausted. Showing no sympathy, Kim tells her they're just getting started and informs her that they still need to run 20 kilometers. Shocked, Aaron tries to protest but realizes she has no choice but to follow his orders. Later, in the classroom, Kim observes Aaron, who looks completely worn out from the training, while he reflects that her physique has potential to be developed. At that moment, Professor Lilia enters and calls for silence, announcing that they will be taking a simple written test on dimensional monsters. She explains that the exam won't count toward their overall ranking but will serve to measure their knowledge and prepare them for the next class, which will be held in the virtual combat simulation room. Kim, relaxed, finishes the test while other students, like Aaron, visibly struggle to concentrate. After collecting the exams, Lilia mentions that she will review the answers and use them as a foundation for the next class. In the teacher's lounge, Lilia reviews the tests, but she questions how he could dare to consider those answers acceptable. The teacher responsible for the class asks if something is wrong, and Lilia explains that she gave a simple test on how to handle monsters. While the students from noble families performed well, Kim clearly didn't take the exam seriously. The following week, in the combat simulation room, Lilia returns with the results. She calls Kim to the front and informs him that he received a 0. Reviewing his answers, the first question asks for the most effective way to deal with a stone goblin. Kim simply wrote, "Hit the stomach." Outraged, Lilia moves on to the next question, which describes a scenario where 8 wild goblins are charging toward him. Kim answered, "Start with the closest ones, send each one to hell." Frustrated, Lilia criticizes his lack of strategy and explains that stone goblins have extremely high defenses, impossible to penetrate with an ordinary sword. However, Kim insists that a single strike solves the problem. Skeptical, Lilia proposes a practical test. If Kim can defeat a stone goblin exactly as he described, she will reconsider his grade. Accepting the challenge, Kim picks up a simple sword and approaches the holographic stone goblin. Lilia remarks that she has heard of his previous feats, such as defeating 120 goblins, but is confident he cannot do the same against a stone goblin using an ordinary sword. Kim faces the holographic goblin, confident and ready to prove that his simple answers are effective. As the stone goblin lunges to attack, Kim dodges and counters with precision, driving his sword directly into the creature's stomach. The goblin freezes for a moment before shattering completely. completely. The spectators fall into stunned silence, and Kim, unfazed, turns to Lilia and casually asks if everything is alright, reaffirming that, as he said, just hit the stomach. Ian watches the scene and comments that Kim defeated the goblin using only a basic sword, without any magic, impressing the other students. Lilia, however, cannot hide her shock and questions how he managed to do it. Kim casually replies that all she needed to do was pay attention, just hit the goblin in the stomach. Lilia, however, explains that it's not that simple. To defeat a stone goblin with a regular sword, one must be at least an S-class contractor. Even so, she admits that the logic behind the direct strike makes sense but still questions how Kim accomplished such a feat. Seizing the moment, Kim demands that she acknowledge his answer was correct, but Lilia refuses, stating that he still needs to prove that his other answers are also valid. She summons a new challenge, creating a dungeon around Kim. He complains about the sudden change of scenery, but Lilia simply instructs him to focus on the wild goblins in front of him. She explains that these goblins struggle to control their rage, making them extremely dangerous. If not defeated properly, they will use their special ability, Greto, to summon more nearby goblins. Lilia suggests that the traditional approach would be to use magic to defeat them all at once or to run away. Despite this, Kim charges forward without hesitation. With swift movements, he eliminates the first two goblins with precise strikes and finishes off the third before it can activate its ability. After defeating all three instantly, Kim looks at Lilia and confidently states that his answer was correct once again. It's simple. If you don't give your opponent time to react, you win. Later, during his training routine, Kim puts Choi Aaron on the treadmill. She pushes herself to the limit but eventually collapses on the floor, exhausted. Gasping for breath, Aaron comments that she has never trained this intensely in her clan. Surprised, Kim asks how she expects to face monsters without proper physical conditioning. She responds that she uses magic by channeling the power of the constellations. Kim reflects that while this is a common practice, relying solely on magic is risky. He explains that in situations where magic is restricted, like in labyrinths, or if her mana runs out, she would be completely vulnerable. Determined, Aaron declares that she is willing to continue since Kim promised to teach her swordsmanship. Kim thinks she's only doing it because he told her to but decides to let it go. He finishes the training session but mentions that he will do one more round, asking if she wants to join. Clearly intimidated, Aaron decides to leave, and Kim casually tells her he'll see her later. As Kim continues training, Brace comments on Aaron's resilience, asking if he plans to teach her his technique. Kim admits he has never directly shown his technique but believes she may have picked up on something during the lessons. Brace finds this interesting, and Kim considers that maybe he could teach her something. At that moment, Kim notices Si-hyuk observing him. Si-hyuk remarks that he always trains before classes and politely asks to continue. Kim reflects on Si-hyuk's dedication, assuming that his physical endurance must come from natural talent. Brace adds that Si-hyuk is probably more prepared than those who rely solely on magic. Later, Kim reviews the censored mission in his system, which mentions the center of the Great Forest of Valhalla. He recalls hearing about this place in a previous class. It is one of the last survival refuges during the semester. Although he doesn't want to get involved, Kim concludes that he must complete the mission before moving forward. Meanwhile, Brace teases Kim about the fight with the bullies, but Kim insists that he held back as much as possible. Had he not restrained himself, the situation could have ended the same way it did with Brace in the past. Kim decides that he cannot leave before completing his mission, believing that the secrets of reincarnation will only be revealed once it is fully accomplished. In the United Kingdom, at the Vendrick family mansion, Adelia Vendrick, the vice leader of the house, converses with her butler, who updates her on recent events. He mentions that the labyrinth near Zin has been cleared, which Adelia considers a job well done. The butler also informs her about two survivors from the Robert clan, both A-class contractors, suggesting that they deserve the constellation's blessing. Intrigued, Adelia asks for more details, and the butler mentions something about Rockdale, implying that something has happened with him again. Growing suspicious, Adelia demands a more detailed explanation, preparing herself to address the emerging issues involving her family and the contractors. The butler confirms that this Sarah has been summoned to Korea, which deeply displeases Adelia Vendrick. She expresses her disdain, calling this Sarah the black sheep of the family and the worst of delinquents. Adelia recalls how he committed atrocities in the name of the Vendrick family, including the murder of 5 people at the English Academy when he was 19 years old, simply because they started an argument with him. At 20, he was officially disowned and has been living in hiding ever since. Surprised by Disara's involvement with Rockdale, Adelia orders that this Sarah be placed under surveillance. Additionally, she instructs that Rock be warned that if he is caught engaging in any suspicious behavior, he will be expelled from the Vendrick family. The butler understands and takes his leave, informing her that he will include everything in the report. Left alone, Adelia reflects with disdain on how so many people are using powers they did not earn through merit. She believes these powers should not be in the hands of trash and thinks to herself that everything ultimately converges on one person person, herself. Yet, Adelia seems oblivious to her own hypocrisy as she questions the guardian constellation about the legitimacy of these powers. In Valhalla, during a class, the instructor explains the etymology of the word malefactor, which combines mal, meaning evil, and factor, meaning maker, referring to someone who commits evil. He highlights that, in modern society, the term is used to describe those who wield the powers of constellations for vile purposes. While malefactors typically operate alone, they also form organizations, the most notorious being the Group 1. Gods. As Kim listens to the explanation, he reflects on his current body. He realizes he is growing stronger thanks to consistent training and the use of mana. Although he does not consider himself a genius, he believes he is far better than he was in his past life. However, he still wonders why his body was so frail in the beginning, with only a minimal amount of mana and such low physical endurance. He concludes that something must have happened in the past but decides not to dwell on it for now. A sound interrupts his thoughts. Ian slams her hand on his desk and hands him a note. When Kim opens it, he finds only a simple hi written on it, with no explanation, leaving him puzzled. Later, the professor announces that students will be allowed to leave campus over the weekend, provided they submit their requests. Considering leaving, Kim casually states that he just wants to go for a walk. Curious, Brace asks why he wants to go out and where he plans to go. Kim doesn't answer, as he is soon interrupted by Ian, who starts stuttering, struggling to speak to him. Impatient, Kim urges her to be direct, but she gets lost in her own thoughts, recalling how he killed the stone goblin without using magic. While she hesitates, Lilia unexpectedly appears and directly asks Kim how he managed to defeat the goblin. Surprised, he questions why Lilia is meddling, considering she always seemed to dislike him. However, she denies it and admits that Kim demonstrated different methods for handling monsters, which piqued her curiosity. Lilia then makes an unusual proposal. She wants Kim to become her assistant. He flatly refuses, claiming he needs to submit his request to leave campus. Back in his dormitory, Kim researches information about the place he plans to visit, a black market where he intends to sell the treasures he found in the vault. The market, controlled by a guardian constellation known as the Secret Ruler, is infamous for allowing any kind of trade, attracting both elites and criminals. Despite its illegal nature, the market is untouchable by governments due to the constellation's influence. As Kim wraps up his research, Choyaran sends him messages filled with emojis, informing him that she won't be able to train the next day. He replies briefly, wishing her a good trip, but reflects on her persistence. Eventually, Kim finds a link on a forum that provides the market's location. Wearing a hood, he follows the map to the destination, which leads into an old, dilapidated cafe. Upon entering, to his surprise, the place appears completely empty. Reading the instructions on his phone, Kim sees that he must enter and head to the right corner. Once there, he finds a door. As he opens it, he is instantly transported to an entirely different place. He finds himself on a dark and eerie street with a peculiar atmosphere. The purple sky, dotted with the moon obscured by clouds, feels strangely familiar. He wonders why this scene looks so similar to the night sky he saw 300 years ago. While taking in the view, a man in a leather jacket approaches and asks if it's his first time there. Kim notices that the man matches the description of a market employee he had seen online. Confirming it's his first time, Kim explains that he already knows a bit about how the market operates. He pulls out some money and hands it to the man, reflecting that by doing so, he has exhausted the funds he earned for ranking first in the entrance exam. Now, he has only 30,000 won left in his account. However, he remains calm, knowing he came to the market precisely to make more money. The man asks what Kim wants, and he replies that he wants to sell some jewels. When asked where he plans to sell them, Kim says he doesn't want to auction them but prefers a quick sale. The man recommends he go to the market in the 3rd district, where merchants buy all kinds of items, jewels, weapons, and various other goods. He also suggests Morris, a merchant known for offering the best prices for gold and jewels. When Kim asks how to get to the 3rd district, the man points out the way and advises him to go straight when he reaches a crossroads. Before letting him leave, the man gives Kim an important recommendation: to wear a mask. He explains that due to the nature of the business conducted in the market, it's common for people to conceal their identities. As a courtesy, he offers Kim a mask, which Kim gratefully accepts before heading to the 3rd district. In the 3rd district, Kim notices that everyone is wearing masks. He directly asks if any of them is Morris, making one man visibly uncomfortable until he eventually admits that he is the person Kim is looking for. Curious, Morris asks what kind of goods Kim wants to sell. Kim pulls a sack from his backpack and tosses it onto the table, stating that he wants to sell its contents. Upon opening the sack, Morris finds impressive artifacts from the era of destruction. Morris carefully examines the items and realizes they all originate from the same era, leaving him both surprised and intrigued. He asks where Kim obtains so many rare artifacts, but Kim reminds him that questions like that aren't welcome there. Morris apologizes, admitting he became so fascinated by the items that he lost control and nearly compromised his reputation as a trader. While assessing the artifacts, Morris confesses that he can't determine a fair price. He explains that due to their rarity and historical value, the items are beyond his current financial capacity. Without enough capital to buy them all, Morris contemplates how to handle the situation while Kim patiently waits for an offer. Surprised by the estimated value of the artifacts from the era of destruction, Kim asks Morris where he could go to receive a fair price for them. Morris suggests the auction house, mentioning that Kim probably passed by a tall building on his way to the market. Curious, Kim asks how long it would take to sell the items there. Morris explains that, on average, the process takes between 2 and 3 weeks due to high demand and the necessary scheduling. When Kim asks if he would need to return to the market in person to collect the payment, Morris confirms. Frustrated, Kim thinks this is a major inconvenience. He insists on knowing how much, approximately, these items would fetch at an auction. After thinking for a moment, Morris quotes an exorbitant amount, so high that Kim wonders how many zeros are in that figure. Although he knew these artifacts were valuable in his past life, he hadn't expected the price to be so staggering. Kim then asks Morris how much of that amount he could provide immediately. Morris replies that even if he sold everything he owned, he would only have about 3/4 of the total value. Surprised, Kim decides to accept that amount, leaving Morris stunned by his decision. Morris reflects on the artifacts from the era of destruction. Beyond being ancient, they possess another unique characteristic: the constellations, which began to emerge after the end of that era, react unusually well to these artifacts. Even individuals without powers can form contracts with S-class constellations thanks to these items. He recalls that these artifacts are known as alchemist zones and are still active for contractors. Examining the items again, Morris notices the exceptional flow of mana within them, a lingering trace of the powerful magic from the era of destruction, which confirms their authenticity. As Kim says his goodbyes, Morris starts to think that it must be his lucky day. However, the sudden appearance of a man standing in front of him startles him, making him feel uneasy. Later at home, Kim reflects on how uncomfortable his experience at the market was. He admits that he felt like he could have been killed at any moment. Remembering the instructions, he realizes that returning through the same door brought him back to the starting point, the old cafe where it all began. Checking his phone, Kim confirms that the money has already been transferred to his account, resolving his financial troubles once and for all. He remarks to himself that with only 8 rings from the vault, he managed to secure a considerable sum and still has plenty more stored away. Feeling confident, he concludes that he won't face any more money-related problems in the future. As he walks down the street, his phone rings. He doesn't recognize the number but answers anyway. To his surprise, it's Lilia. She casually asks what he's doing and invites him to grab something to eat together. Curious, Kim asks how she got his number. Lilia nonchalantly replies that, as a professor at Valhalla, she has access to that information. Without much concern for formalities, Lilia tells Kim to meet her in front of Valhalla Academy and adds that she will pay for the meal. She hangs up before he can respond. Confused, Kim reflects on the situation, wondering who hangs up like that without waiting for an answer. He debates whether to accept the invitation, thinking that, at the very least, he'll get a free meal. After all, he's free now, and although Lilia is older, the idea doesn't seem so bad. Meanwhile, at the market, an imposing man stands before Morris, exerting an unsettling pressure. The man asks why Morris seems tense. Trying to justify himself, Morris explains that although he has encountered the market owner a few times, it's unusual for a regular merchant to interact directly with him. The man responds that it's precisely because of Morris's approach that he likes him. Casually, the market owner explains that he isn't there for anything important but noticed that Morris anonymously registered for an auction, something that hasn't happened in a long time. Morris realizes that anonymity isn't as secure as he thought. Referring to the true owner of the market as the constellation he represents, the man states that they have access to any information they need. He then requests to take a look at the items Morris listed for auction. Morris agrees, though he finds the man's sudden interest odd, especially in artifacts from the era of destruction. He organizes the items on the table, and the man, examining the artifacts, remarks that they will likely fetch incredibly high prices. Intrigued, Morris asks why he's so interested when a system message appears for the man. The message indicates that a constellation is extremely interested in one of the rings. The man repeats that the constellation seems desperate for the artifact, and this fact draws even more attention. Meanwhile, Kim arrives at the restaurant to meet Lilia. They begin eating spaghetti, but Kim appears uncomfortable. Noticing this, Lilia asks why he isn't eating properly. He responds that he was just wondering why Valhalla has a place like this. Lilia explains that, besides the school cafeteria and the staff restaurant, the academy also has a regular restaurant. She asks if he didn't know that, to which Kim replies that he simply wasn't interested. Without hesitation, Kim directly asks why Lilia invited him there. She brings up her proposal for him to become her assistant. He refuses once again, but she insists, saying he should at least think about it. Lilia highlights the benefits he would gain if he accepted, asking if he truly didn't realize realized that this was the reason she invited him to lunch. Urging him to listen, she begins listing the advantages. First, he would receive a scholarship and other financial support. Curious, Kim asks for more details. Lilia mentions that he would have the chance to co-author a research paper with her. She explains that if the article were published, it could focus on the 3 types of monster attacks, and his name would be included in the World Monster Research Association. This, according to her, would bring both prestige and wealth. However, Kim seems unimpressed. As a final attempt, Lilia adds that he would be allowed to leave the campus twice a week instead of only once a month. Despite these advantages, Kim remains skeptical, leaving the decision open as he finishes his meal. Kim asks if Lilia has anything else to offer. She mentions the opportunity to work directly with her, but he responds that it sounds like pure ego on her part. Lilia, persistent, continues trying to convince Kim to become her assistant, but he keeps refusing. In his mind, Kim reflects that if there were a truly useful benefit, he might consider it, but nothing so far has been tempting enough. His immediate focus is reaching the center of the Great Forest, something that can only be done during the first-year performance evaluation. He concludes that even as an instructor, Lilia would have difficulty accessing that location. Bluntly, he tells her directly that he won't be her assistant nor will he co-write the proposed article. However, Lilia doesn't give up and tries a new approach. She suggests exchanging information. She proposes that if she offers something that piques Kim's interest, he could, in return, share insights about monster attacks. Curious, Kim asks what kind of information she has. Lilia reveals that it's about Choi Aaron, the girl often seen by his side. Kim explains that he is only helping Aaron with her training and wonders if they truly seem that close. He states that he isn't interested, but Lilia continues, saying she heard rumors that Choi Aaron might be disowned by her family. Even so, Kim shows little interest and stands up to leave. Lilia stops him, asking where he's going, to which he replies that the benefits she's offering don't appeal to him and, since they've finished their meal, he intends to leave. Lilia insists that he should at least pay for the information, but Kim says he doesn't care about what she said. Before leaving, he changes the subject, asking why, despite seeming so childish, she is so strict as a teacher. Lilia responds that as a professor who teaches about mysterious monsters, she cannot afford to be lenient. She explains that the students' survival rate during monster attacks directly depends on their preparation and that if they don't memorize at least the basic attacks, they are doomed. That's why she must be tough on them. Kim concludes that this is just an ideology, but Lilia corrects him, saying it is a teacher's duty. He remarks that it's admirable, wishes her good luck, and prepares to leave. However, Lilia once again asks him to pay for the information before going. Ignoring her, Kim says goodbye and walks away. Meanwhile, in the Choi Jin family, the head of the family, Choi Jan, summons Choi Aaron and her older brother, Choi Jin-dong. He explains that he called them to discuss their intentions to participate in the ranking test, an event that will carry the family's reputation. Choi Jan emphasizes that by passing the test, they will have the chance to form a contract with one of the sacred relics, proving they are legitimate successors of the family. However, he warns that any failure will result in their permanent exclusion from the family. Despite the pressure, both Jin-dong and Aaron declare that they will take the test. Observing their determination, Choi Jan confirms that the test will be held in 3 weeks and dismisses them. As they leave the room, Jin-dong comments to Aaron, asking if she noticed the hidden meaning in what was said. Confused, she asks what he means. Jin-dong recalls the moment when she declared her intention to take the test and questions whether she noticed their father's expression at that moment, hinting that there was more at stake than just the ranking. Choi Aaron vividly remembers the look her father gave her, and Jin-dong mocks her desire to become the head of the family, pointing out that she is merely an illegitimate daughter. Irritated, Aaron shows her anger, but Jin-dong continues to provoke her. He scorns her, saying she has no chance of passing the ranking test, especially since she hasn't even obtained the blessing of a constellation. In contrast, he already has a formed contract and believes he is far ahead of her. Jin-dong suggests she should give up and live the remaining time under the family's financial protection, promising to make her pay dearly. Before leaving, he reminds her that the test will be in 3 weeks. Aaron remains in place, deep in thought, as she recalls a memory from the past, an elderly woman in her final moments, asking her to become the head of the family, to achieve that goal, and finally be free to do whatever she wishes. Motivated, Aaron reaffirms her determination. The next day, in the classroom, Kim is distracted while Brace tries to warn him about the upcoming midterm exams. Brace asks if he is worried, but Kim only notices the teacher explaining about the exams when Brace insists. The teacher emphasizes that the exams are extremely important at Valhalla. In both the midterm and final evaluations, students with the lowest grades are immediately expelled. He He instructs the class to prepare for both theoretical and practical tests, warning them not to score poorly right from the start. Kim reflects that he isn't concerned about the practical exams, but the theoretical ones are a problem. He needs to stay in the school until he reaches the center of the great forest, but he still has no idea how to get there. He asks Brace if he has attended classes covering the exam content, and Brace confirms. Kim then proposes that Brace take the test for him. Brace is surprised by the suggestion, but Kim explains that he will simply check his answers and correct any mistakes. Brace questions the fairness of this, but Kim insists, arguing that he would give Brace the answers during the exam anyway. While Kim and Brace debate internally, the teacher ends the class. Kim gets up to leave, but Aaron approaches him. Already annoyed, he asks what she wants this time. She inquires if they will be training that day, and he confirms, asking if she wants to quit. Aaron denies it, but Kim notices her hesitation. He suggests that it's about time they talked about swordsmanship because, despite training together, she probably doesn't know how to use a sword properly. He warns that he won't teach her sword techniques or martial arts but will show her how to hold a sword correctly. Additionally, he mentions that he also needs to train with his own weapon. Inviting her to the training hall next to the academy, Aaron beams with happiness. In the training hall, Kim asks how long it has been since she last used her sword. Aaron replies that it has been a day and a half since she started physical training with him. He asks if she used to practice every day before that, and she confirms. Kim then asks to see her sword. When she draws it, he instructs her to apply pressure with her ring finger and pinky while gripping the handle. Following his guidance, Aaron feels something different. Mana begins to flow through the sword even without her activating magic, and the weapon feels more stable and secure. Kim then tells Aaron to attack him with everything she's got. Determined, she sheathes her sword again and prepares to charge at him. As Choi Aaron rushes to attack, she notices that the speed of her movements is changed. Kim comments that she is faster now but advises her not to use more magic on her feet than necessary. She agrees, sheathes her sword again, and repeats the attack, charging at him once more. Kim easily dodges and compliments her effort but suggests that when she stops, she should rotate her body a bit more to better use the momentum. Aaron absorbs the advice and continues attacking relentlessly, while Kim effortlessly evades each strike. Despite the intense training, the floor of the hall begins to show signs of wear, and Aaron is visibly exhausted, trembling from the effort. After a while, Kim decides to end the session, saying that it's enough for today. Aaron collapses to the ground, drained, and watches Kim, reflecting on how her sword skills have sharpened since the beginning of their training. She acknowledges that she is still far from reaching his level but accepts it as natural. After all, she was the one who asked to learn his techniques. Still determined, Aaron asks to duel with Kim once more. He refuses, but internally he admits that training with her is both useful and entertaining. He notices that Aaron has a natural talent and a familiarity with the sword technique he uses, something he had observed since the entrance ceremony. Kim thinks that if it were 300 years ago, Aaron would have been worthy of becoming his disciple, but he concludes that he doesn't have that freedom at the moment. When Kim refuses the duel again, Aaron respects his decision. Teasing her, he asks if she's going to give up so easily. She responds that he's right and decides to follow Kim's advice to become stronger. Kim feels slightly uncomfortable with her submissiveness but ends the day by saying they will see each other again. Aaron agrees and says goodbye. 2 weeks later, at Valhalla Stadium, Ian looks around the place for the first time since the opening ceremony, while Kim notices that all the first-year students are gathered. He is surprised by the number of people present and starts to wonder why they were called there. Brace reminds him that the professor mentioned this 2 weeks ago, but Kim hadn't paid attention. Instructor Lee Sang appears to explain Valhalla's bi-monthly exams. He informs the students that this time, the practical evaluation will be based on an attack on an artificial dungeon. The students must form groups and work together to complete the challenge. Lee Sang explains that the ideal number of members per group is 8, but they have the freedom to form larger or smaller teams. He emphasizes that the evaluation will be based on individual contribution during the attack and warns that the elimination criterion will be the failure to complete the dungeon within the set time. With those words, the dungeon begins forming around them, and the environment transforms, surrounding everyone. Lee Sang mentions that the dungeon's difficulty is F+, but warns that the challenge begins now, setting a 5-hour limit for its completion. Panicked, the students begin forming groups quickly. Lee Sang carefully watches the students from influential families, while Ian comments that the dealer in her group doesn't seem skilled enough, expressing concern about team formation. Kim, meanwhile, analyzes the situation around him, pondering how he will perform in this new challenge. Ian reflects on group formation and concludes that in an F+ dungeon with 5 hours available, individual contribution is the most important factor. With 6 people in a group, it would be possible to add members with good skills, but standing out in a balanced team would still be challenging. Lee Sang observes the students and recognizes patterns in their choices. He thinks that the 5th-generation descendants understand the purpose of the exam well. Meanwhile, other students form larger groups of up to 20 20 people or follow the recommended 8-member teams. However, he knows that if a team isn't well balanced, conflicts may arise, leading to the 3 outcomes he anticipates: success, failure, or internal disputes. After 30 minutes, most of the students had already entered the dungeon, and Lee Sang prepared to evaluate their performances. Kim, however, remained behind, quietly observing. He noticed that Erin was still standing in the same spot and asked why she hadn't entered yet. Erin replied that she was waiting, following what he had told her. Kim, incredulous, questioned what was going on with her, recalling how she had tried to follow his sword instructions since their last training session. He announced that he would enter alone, suggesting she do the same, but made it clear that it was whatever to him. Erin remained still, contemplating Kim's words. A few students noticed her standing alone and, curious, approached to ask why she wasn't part of a group. They offered her a spot on their team since they were 7 members and, with her, they would have the recommended 8. However, Erin politely declined, stating that she would enter alone. Surprised, the students tried to convince her to reconsider, warning that it was risky and could lead to elimination. Still, trusting in Kim's words, she insisted that she could handle it. As Erin entered the dungeon, Lee Sang moved to the stadium's monitoring room to observe the students' performances. He noticed that many students were struggling. Scores began to be recorded, and the more timid students tended to have the worst results. Lee Sang reflected that while the evaluation seemed harsh, it was actually fair and precise, thanks to the experience of the combat instructor, Lun Shu. A legendary contractor, Lun Shu was known as the Clear Master, with a 99% success rate in dungeons. Lee Sang admired his ability to assess with precision and efficiency, considering him an unmatched expert in dungeon raids. Lee Sang assessed that the overall performance of the 5th generation students was promising. He highlighted Ce-Ean as an exceptional student. In her group, Ce-Ean operated from the rear, organizing and giving clear commands to the members. She instructed the tanks to block at the front line while the archers handled enemies attacking from the flanks. During a confrontation, a monster charged at the tank, but he managed to hold the attack. Ce-Ean swiftly commanded the archers to fire, and their arrows struck the monster with precision. She then advanced and finished the enemy off with a clean strike to the head. Impressed, Lee Sang mentally praised Ce-Ean's performance. He thought the girl had executed a textbook dungeon attack with excellence, assigning clear roles to her team and ensuring that every move was calculated to maximize their score. Ce-Ean maintained a strategic formation with her team, keeping members well positioned to ensure the dungeon's completion. Lee Sang observed that if she continued performing like this in the midterm exams, it would only be a matter of time before she regained the spotlight. He reflected that if it hadn't been for Kim during the entrance ceremony, her record wouldn't have been tarnished. Curious, he decided to check how Kim was performing but couldn't find any information in the system. Surprised, Lee Sang realizes that the monitoring system, which records data on all students in the dungeons, has no information on Kim. Then, he remembers to check another category: students who have already completed the dungeon. To his astonishment, Kim appears on the list, having finished the dungeon alone in just 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Lee Sang is stunned. Even considering Kim's impressive performance during the entrance ceremony, he questions whether this is a time that a 17-year-old high school student could realistically achieve. Determined to understand what happened, he reviews the footage. In the video, Kim stands calmly in front of a horde of monsters. After briefly warming up, he launches into the attack, annihilating the monsters with lethal precision. He slices through the wild goblins effortlessly, confronts the giant ogres, and decapitates them with ease. The scene leaves the 3 professors speechless. When a massive iron golem appears, an enemy specifically designed to challenge groups of 8 people, Kim doesn't hesitate. He delivers a precise frontal thrust, severing the golem's head and defeating it instantly. Lee Sang, at a loss for words, accepts that Kim will take first place in the bi-monthly exam.